Good evening. Gosh, this is going smoother and smoother.
Well, on your end, you didn't have to try to connect it tonight.
Oh,
It
okay.
was on me.
Okay, right. It went smooth for me.
I'm glad. So, welcome to another edition of our Unpolished podcast. And hello, Catherine. Thank you for joining us. Hello. So, we are going to talk tonight about this uh, paradox concept. And I know that, this first got introduced to us or recently got reintroduced to us right through a podcast where Brene had Esther Perel on. And, I know you're going to unpack, yeah, mind blowing. You're going to unpack this concept about paradoxes and splitting paradoxes. And then we're each going to share some exercises. Before I ask you to do that, can you just tell me when you saw that Brene invited Esther to, be on her podcast, how excited were you?
Oh, I love them both. I mean, of course, we love, I love Brene, but Esther, she's just, I would love to, in my next life, or maybe in this life, I don't know, I want to be as good as her. She's just amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely
don't
amazing.
give up. I think you're almost there.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
almost
I
there.
think so.
So
I love you.
love you too. Love you too. Good evening, Lily. Hi, everyone. So give us a little note in the comments if you've heard about this paradox, splitting the paradox. Just type a yes or no if you've heard it before, because this is one of those concepts, Sanela, that now that I understand it, I realize I've been talking about this sort of thing happening
Yes.
certainly in my marriage. And now I'm starting to think about it in other relationships, but I didn't have the words for it. I didn't have a name for it. And so I like that she's kind of created this concept around it. So go ahead and maybe walk us into it and help us understand what it is.
Yes, what they mean by that. Yeah, I think that was so exciting for me. And I can't wait to hear your stories and share mine, because I want to unpack this. Because, I mean, it's in essence what it is a situation that we all find ourselves in at, pretty much everywhere, at work, in relationship with loved ones, with kids, with ourselves. That's one thing that I kind of had an aha moment this week. It's like, actually that is true for problems that we try to solve that just involve ourselves. So essentially it is like, when you have a life is a paradox. A life is full of these situations that have multiple of outcomes. And when we are able to sort of hold that flexibility of, you can have your position and I can have mine, and we are sort of pushing and pulling and kind of stretching that problem to kind of mold the solution together, then we are actually working with that truth of life, that life is a paradox. It's full of these paradoxical situations where both things are true. So there's no either or position, there's and position. So
Yeah. Okay.
makes
So in coaching, we sometimes refer to this as polarities, or it would be
yes,
another word, right? Where two seemingly opposed or polar opposite ideas
yes,
could exist in a situation, and one person in the conversation might hold one position, and the other person seems to hold this other position, and
yes,
we go into it trying to convince maybe the other that our
yes,
position is right, and so it's either or, but actually what I heard them saying is that it's a and they could
and
both exist.
yes. And I think the splitting, she calls it splitting the ambivalence. So when we take that paradox, a situation, a problem, and we split it. So I take the positive, you take the negative.
Yeah.
Okay. So you say, like in the example, like, I want kids, you don't want kids. And we split and we ignore the context of it. We just sort of dig ourselves into our respective positions. And at that point, we split the ambivalence. And we are no longer negotiating the paradox of the problem. We are not trying to We are not in the growth mindset, as we say in coaching. We are not in that space. We are holding the polar opposites, and we cannot see the solution. So those, then we become either or, and we forget the end.
And I imagine that this is what gets us to this impasse, right? It gets us to the situation where we think there's no solution here.
Yes.
What could possibly be the solution? I want this, you want this. You think it's this, I think it's this. And we're like looking at the middle going like, how are we, it seems too far apart.
Correct. Yeah. And what was also interesting that, so we, instead of trying to, which we normally do when we are in a flow, we are reconciling the paradox of a problem, the multitude of solutions. We are reconciling it within ourselves. This is where, when we split the ambivalence, we then we take the identity of that position. So,
give us an example. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can walk into my example that I had. So when I was 32, I started, I was kind of at the point in my career where I thought like, I need to do more, but at the same time, I wanted kids, and my husband wanted kids. So it was kind of that point where I was kind of saying, no, I can either have my career or I can have kids.
Uh-huh.
And I lived with that. So the desire is, and my husband wanted kids. So we are kind of but it was, so in my situation, you can kind of get into relational, like, into relational with the husband. But for me, it was internal battle. So for me, it was like, either I can have one or I can have the other. And I split that ambivalence for so long, like, probably 2 or 3 years, I was in that, and I was pursuing one. And then one day I just put an end in between. And I remember that moment of just putting, why am I pursuing this either or? What if I put an end? So what if I can have a child and have a career, or have whatever?
Okay. You already did that at 32, because listen, I wasn't anywhere near switching my ors to ands at 32. I didn't even understand that concept yet. So
I think
you're right. You're light years ahead of me.
My eggs were kind of like saying, like, you better split something here. You better reconcile something. But yeah, so that is one example of sort of entrenching yourself in two opposites, and not seeing the world in black and white, and not being able to move forward.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think of a couple. Well, one I've been talking about for years between my husband and I, which is I'm the worrier. He even calls me sometimes, nervous Nelly, like I have another name, right? I'm the worrier, and he's the kind of calm, easy flow. And I saw it play out, and especially with our parenting, because I would, I think something's wrong with the baby. I think something's wrong with the kid. I think we need to go to the doctor. I'm like worried, maybe what if he's got this? What if he's got this? And I'm like, and my husband's like, I think it's all right. But he's like, let's just wait and see. And I'm like, we can't wait and see. And because I was anxious and nervous, and he was so calm, I would increase my worry to try to get a reaction from him. Like, come on, we better take this seriously. And the more I worried, the more calm he got. And we got further and further away, right? We just couldn't. And it was like, he's like, wow, she's freaking out so much. I better go calm her. And I'm like, he's so calm, I better freak out more.
He's
not going to do anything. Until I witnessed one time where, like, I don't know, something was going on with the kids, and I kind of was like thinking, I wasn't thinking about it. I don't know why. I don't know where nervous Nelly was at this point. But basically my husband said, I think we should get this checked out. Let's take him to the doctor. And I was like, what? Oh my God. And so for me, like, okay, if he's worried, then
it must be bad.
And I'm like, why could he suddenly be worried? And I'm like, he could suddenly express a little bit of
Yes.
concern or worry because I wasn't already occupying that space.
Yes. Yeah. Oh gosh, that blew my mind away. That is exactly what we do. Um, so has that sort of that shift in that example, has that created more space, or have you reverted to your roles? Are you still do you still have a badge of nervous Nelly?
I do. Like that's, that's in the relationship.
Mm,
What I loved in this conversation between Brene and Nesta Perel was that there was this moment where, so I had known that this was happening, right? So when she was talking about,
yes.
I'm like, oh, that's the paradox. I get that. Yes. Okay. So that's what it's called, splitting ambivalence. Like we then
Yes.
own one of these identities. I own worrier, and
Yes.
he owns calm, and
Yes.
we label each other as that. I even got a
Yes.
nickname out of it. And then
Mm,
that's the story I live out. And
yes.
that's probably the story he's living out. And what just freaked me out when she said it in the podcast was when she said, and you probably chose them for
Yes.
that reason, like because they represent a part of you that does exist. Something
Yes.
so there is a calm, go with the flow part of me
Mm.
somewhere. I don't know. I
Unexpressed.
still
Yes.
looking,
Yeah.
but unexpressed, like, and there's a reason, there's something holding me back from being able to fully express or lean into that calm, go with the
Mm.
flow person. And of course, I can immediately think to, okay, maybe it's just, fear, anxiety, kind of just always having a little bit of um, a watchful eye that, what could be coming, and I'm
Mm.
afraid that if I go with the flow, something's going to catch me off guard, right? So
Mm.
there
Mm.
is a part of me that wants and loves and appreciates go with the flow.
Mm.
But there's a bigger part of me that's holding that back. And so something in me, is attracted to that in my
Yes.
husband because he can express a part of me that I struggle to release.
It's so amazing, and that dynamic just
Okay,
going through
if
it.
anybody's listening into this and can relate to this sort of a thing, give us a little, like, blowing head emoji or something in the
Yes.
comments so we know that you connect to this.
Or I would love to hear other people's examples, but I would love to underscore a couple of things there. It's the I am the warrior.
Yeah,
He is. He's the easygoing, go with the flow guy. And I think that is one thing that as taking roles and keeping, everybody has a role, like, everybody, even in our work, like, we take certain roles, and that's okay, like that's how it functions. But what was interesting is that when we start blaming each other, so if you kind of go into, oh, what is wrong with you, like why aren't you worried, why aren't you not help, why aren't you mobilizing, why do I always have to take kids to the doctor, why do I have to be the one who wakes up 15 times at night, so when you kind of
those are
go
very good
into
questions, and I recognize them.
and you start having arguments, don't you? So you start having these arguments and blaming the other for being, for taking that role, taking that position. And then we go into this total identification, and that's where we become rigid. And I think that I can totally recognize things in my marriage like that. And I don't know if I see Elise is there, like, I don't know if I'm hoping we are not the only one. I'm hoping that people kind of like, yeah, we have that.
Listen, if Brene Brown can have an aha moment in the middle of that podcast, then I know we're not alone. I also recognize it. So since listening to that and understanding this concept, I'm like, okay, it's not just the worrier. It's also something that is recently coming up for me personally around, am I super, like, overly safe, like not adventurous? Like, my husband's
Mm.
adventurous. and I'm, you know, more conservative, right? And
Yeah.
we even talk about like he's always got to be living like on the edge. He's always got to be
Yes.
like one step in the danger zone. Like even if he's like
Mm.
following all the rules in most of his life, he has to have one part of his life where he's like, you know, kind of breaking the mold and kind of being a little bit of a rebel. And that's his identity for doing that, right? And I'm like, you know, the play it safe one. I'm like, and my husband said, but that's not true. You like adventure. And I'm like, yes, but I'm much more, I have a much more cautious relationship with my adventure, right? And there's some adventure I like, some I don't. And I even witnessed, like when we were living in the US, we were married in the US, and he said, you know, how about we move to Switzerland? I have a job opportunity there. And I'm like, Switzerland? Well, okay. Wow, that would be adventurous. He's like, yeah, let's be those kind of people that like, you know, don't always just live in our own country and go see other parts of the world. Okay, I'm on board for that adventure. Let's go. We do it. We love it. We're happy. And, you know, 10 years into it, he's like, let's move to China. I'm like, what? But I already did the adventure.
I didn't know. But tell me something. So how the sort of realization, or like, you know, how we put ourselves in boxes. That's what I'm curious about. Like, you know, we put ourselves in a box and we label it not adventurous, or, you know, a rule breaker, or a fun one, you know, a stable one, or whatever. Yeah. You know, label can go on and on. So what's interesting in this dynamic where we have, you know, close friendships, marriages and stuff, when that becomes annoying to us, there is something
Label?
that, not the label, but like, you know, when we start in the relationship and that opposite of us, let's say easygoing attitude, starts sort of rubbing us the wrong way. Okay. And I have experienced that, and I have learned to see that. I mean, for years, you know, I argued about, like, you know, we were kind of locked into opposites and trying to prove who is better. You know, is it better to be more adventurous? Is it better to be, you know, whatever, a stable one? But then at some point, I actually realized that when I start to get annoyed, that is the invitation for me to grow. Because you know how she says, like, you know, in us there is that, you know, in the opposite that we see from others, it's
Yes.
sitting in us. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't even bother. You know, it wouldn't bother us. It wouldn't bother us that the other person is so different.
Yes.
So there is a that side of us. And I feel that, like, you know, we kind of you know, yes, we recognize it, we have funny names for each other, but then when it starts to bother us, I think that inside of us, that part that is being denied has grown enough to kind of say, hey, I want a little bit of what he's got or what she's got.
So
And
like
I
a
have,
signal that you're ready. Okay.
kind of, it's a signal and invitation that actually, that is something that I really have to now, you know, it's not there's no point of me trying to persuade him that actually it's much better to be calm in, let's say, when kids are sick. You know, there's no point, like, you know, that to actually grow in that space, to express that myself. I don't know
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
it does. And you know what? I get a visual from it as you describe it, and it came up for me when I heard them talking about it on the podcast, is it reminds me of the yin yang symbol. You know, you have the white side and it has a dot of black in it, and you have the black side with a dot of white in it.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like, you know, if I'm the, you know, the safety side with a dot of adventure, you know, and he's the adventure side with a dot of
Yeah.
safety, right? That this belief that there is part of that in us.
Yeah.
And that perhaps the reason we are attracted to this other person or something in us in that other, it's something in the other person is kind of rubbing us the wrong way, is because it's calling to that dot. It's
Yes.
calling to that part of us that is saying,
Oh,
come on, come
yeah.
on, you know you can do it. You know you want to
Yes.
just grow a little bigger in this area. And so that's
Mm.
the invitation I hear you talking about.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, that was very
I have
interesting.
one last
Mm-hmm.
reflection that maybe we can touch on.
Yeah.
Um, are you still with
Okay.
me? Are you?
I, I'm just ducking, trying to get a bit of a. I'm worried that I'm going to run out of battery. But yeah, you talk. You talk. I'm with
Oh,
you.
okay, okay, okay. Listen, I wanted to just talk about like quickly with children. What is, you know, what makes me think about it is like, how did I get this label? You know,
Okay.
worrier. Okay, so I know why my husband, he's seen it over time. He's seen it with the kids, but like we have identities that I think have come with us from childhood, and I think in our families of origin, we are given some labels. So I'm thinking about like my kids, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we intentionally or maybe unintentionally label them or give them identities as being the introvert or the extrovert, the booky one or the sporty one, the
Mm.
calm, the organized, the kind of the fun and wild one, the more quiet and conservative
Yes.
one. And I have, you know, both of those in my family, and I think about, these are identities, and they're in part because of what they are expressing out into the world.
Mm.
But I think about the labels, and what do you think about how that might play out?
Oh gosh, I think that is the, out of all of this, that is the crux of the issue. That is, when we come to those identities and we can identify and talk about them, then we can stretch the ambivalence. We can sort out whatever we are doing. And I think I hate labels. I absolutely hate labels, um, and I think it's so easy for us to put those onto kids. And then I was thinking about situations where we lock heads with our kids, where we kind of, oh, he, and we say things like, oh, he's the lazy one. He never does, he never wants to do his homework, or she always, she's the caring one, or he's the, whatever, we kind of
Yeah,
give them those, as you say, identities. And I think then they become locked into that, and they kind of, and I have seen that in play out in my family. I've seen that play that in a kind of wider family structure, where you just see how people then follow that. And again, I see Elise is here, like, she her and I had like lovely conversation about, how useful is it, or how really not useful is to actually, um, give give kids those negative labels, or and how then, you're almost like, for you, your warrior, that's your invitation. That is like, if you do not worry, who's gonna who's gonna do it.
yeah,
So I think they are, um, they're not, they're I'm all for roles, like we play roles in the family unit.
mm,
But
mm.
I think we need to be mindful, especially as parents, like, are we actually talking to the identity of the child, and kind of to, whenever we lock horns with around anything, is to kind of say, how much of this is, how rigidly am I attaching that to them as people, or am I externalizing that to be a problem that we can look,
Yeah.
sort of, outside of each other's identity, if you like. I don't know if
And
that
there's
makes
an
sense.
opportunity, yeah, and an opportunity there to share with our children that if we hear them identifying themselves as something or labeling themselves as something, to
Mm.
remind them that they are that, and that
Yeah.
there is an element of the dot of something else in them, that they are not either or. They can be this and.
Oh, that's my favorite conversation to have. And I mean, the most liberating paradox, if you are talking about that, for me, was when we were with Brene and, you know, digging into her work, and when
I know where you're
she
going.
kept, you know where I'm going, when she kept repeating, you can be brave
Brave
and
and
afraid
afraid at the
at the
exact
exact
same
same
time.
time. Exactly. And I mean, it's a kind of, you know, you think about it and you think, of course I've been that all my life, but something about the intention, the kind of the consciousness to hold that paradox is phenomenal. And I constantly talk to my kids. I mean, just before coming on here, like, you know, my daughter says, you know, but I'm just like, you know, I'm like, I'm that person, something about being worried about something. I was like, no, you're not. You're not that person. You're just telling your brain to think those things, but you're not that person. But, you know, let's talk about it. So I love to kind of leave those paradoxes for them to just sit with, because I think if we try to smooth them over, they kind of, you know, then they can get surprised, you know, when they get into a real world and say like, oh, that, you know, not everything is, you know, as clear cut as as
And
I was
that,
led to believe.
right. It's not
Mm,
clear cut. And actually, clear cut is not helpful, right? Because, and I think we get into these paradoxes, these extremes, thinking I'm either this or this. I'm a worrier or I'm a safety person.
mm.
I'm, whatever. No, that wasn't it. Worrier and easy,
Easygoing,
and
yes.
easygoing, right? Or
Relaxed one.
adventurous and safety. We get into those because humans, unfortunately, really like to put people in a box.
Mm,
Again, our brain just doesn't like uncertainty. So
mm,
it likes to
mm,
just sort of know how to wrap up somebody like, oh, you
mm,
are that, and I
mm,
am this. And
mm.
it makes it feel very clean and neat and tidy. And I
Yeah.
think the skill for us to learn and for us to help our children learn is how to hold the tension, how to
Mm,
be a little bit more comfortable in the
mm,
discomfort
mm,
of
mm,
of the tension that exists by potentially being both of these things, brave
mm,
and afraid at the same time. Somebody who likes to, go to school and get their schoolwork done, but also likes to come home and play and have free time.
mm,
You don't
mm,
have to be just one or the other. You can be both. And
mm,
um, yeah, being able to hold that tension. I know the being able to hold the brave and afraid tension is the only way I have been
mm.
able to kind of step outside my comfort zone, being the
I mean,
worrier.
doing that, yeah. But even you know, doing these lives, I mean, we had to. That is what I keep repeating myself. Like, you know, I can be brave and afraid at the same time. But you know what's as you were talking about it, the kind of the most painful paradox for me as a parent, and Brené touched on that, is this knowledge, this certainty. I have to say, it's you know, certainty that I can do and I'm doing. You know, I can invest so much into my parenting. I can invest, you know, so much to, you know, to heal myself, to develop myself, to be the best parent I can be, and and I will still do it imperfectly, and I will still have to hear my kids telling me that, you know, I messed up here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
And you know, that is something that um, I don't think many parents, like, I know how hard it is for me to kind of marry those things, that I can be a good mom and I can make some, you know,
Yeah.
mistakes that my kids are going to go into therapy for.
Exactly. And I have to say that is the only thing I know for certain,
Mm,
is that I will correct in this generation for some things, and I will avoid some of the things that I saw other generations do, but that I will make others. In doing so, in trying to avoid one set of parenting mistakes, I will inadvertently then overcorrect or do something else. And it's really the only certainty that I knew going in. And actually, I'm kind of grateful for it, that before even entering into parenting, I kind of knew, I'm like, you know, even if you get that right, it's going to be something else. Like, I think every generation hopes that, you know, they're going to be the generation to wipe out all of the parenting mistakes, but there's more.
You see, this is where you're ahead of me. I think I have. I don't think I thought much about it, but I had this sense that I'm gonna be somehow omnipresent, and you know, I don't know what I would be, that I would somehow avoid that. And the kind of aha moment came when I went for a Gestalt training, and the coach there, she that was the first thing she said to the group of like, you know, coaches who were also parents. And she said, like, please, whatever you do as we go through training and you learn about yourself, you know, if you have kids, don't analyze it and don't beat yourself up. You will F them up. You already have.
Oh no.
And that is the certainty. You know,
there you
and
go.
you
Did you
you
leave the
are,
room?
you know, no, I just my kid was like, you know, I think Holly was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, and yeah, I kind of was, okay, that's good to know it, you know, now.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah, there's still time. Maybe I can still get it right.
yeah. I did think that as well. Yeah, but I think, you know, now he's 13, I've let go of that.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
Brilliant.
Sanela, thank you for bringing this topic to us on the Unpolished podcast. We are, you know, I think all a mixture of this and that. We are both, and understanding in all of our relationships that perhaps something that is bothering us in somebody else, it's not just about them. Maybe it's something in us that's waiting to come alive. And it's the invitation.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Fabulous. Thank you so much. In fact, thank you everyone who's here. I see Claire is here, and I can't see without glasses properly.
Yeah.
But
thank
yeah,
you. Oh,
thank you.
Let's read this quote. In the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. Ooh, that's deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Exactly.
you.
Exactly.
Thank you. Beautiful. Okay.
Fabulous. Have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, everyone.